Hello and welcome to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Make sure to find the Raptors Show wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe, and please rate and review the show. I'm your host, Wayne Blue, joined by co-host Blake Murphy. Raptors lose yet again. We'll talk about that. We will also catch the latest, trade rumors. Kyle Lowry just got traded, by the way. We can talk about that in today's show. We will catch up. Poor guy, man. The Charlotte Hornets, Kyle Lowry jersey. I will not be purchasing that one.
It might end up being like the Jose Calderon Golden State Warriors jersey, where there are copies of it that physically exist. It's like my holy grail merch item.
Okay.
It's like
Right.
I have been told with certainty a couple of Jose Calderon Warriors jerseys were created. He spent like 4 minutes technically on the roster.
Yeah.
And then got cut.
Well, I think Kyle's going to spend more than 4 minutes technically on the roster.
Yeah, what do we got? 2.5 weeks?
We'll see if he actually plays. Then we got Dennis Schröder for the weekly checkup. See what's going on around the team. Obviously, frustrating loss last night. Ask him about that. We will check in on BBQ, Barnes,
Sure.
Barrett, Quickley. We got to get like a BBQ report. I don't even know.
Yeah.
We should come up with like a catchy name for this.
I don't know. I'll tell you this much. It's a mild sauce right now. A very mild sauce.
Mild performance from the three of them yesterday. Mostly Quickley, though. I think, Scotty turned it around and RJ was pretty decent throw. And then finally, we'll go around the NBA. It was the 18th anniversary of Kobe dropping 81 on the Raptors, I believe, yesterday. And Embiid got to 70, and Karl-Anthony Towns got to 62. Kevin Durant, like the bum that he is, only had 43.
Yeah.
I'm kidding, Kevin. Do not tweet at me, please.
He had a winner, though.
He had the game winner
Which
as well.
one of those guys with a big line did not have.
Yes. And he also got slandered by his coach after dropping 62 in a loss.
Also, we'll talk about that trade more, but it is very funny to me that amid a tank, the Hornets get like 60-plus hung on them by Karl-Anthony Towns, accidentally win the game, and the next morning they're like, we can't ever let this happen. Even Terry Rozier's got to go.
Oh, yeah.
We can't have anyone helping us win basketball games at this point.
They had like Rozier guarding Anthony Edwards for a lot of this thing. And whatever. The whole Timberwolves team was chasing stats for Cat. Because there was, at one point, it looked like Cat may surpass 80 and get to that 81, may even threaten for 100. He had like 52 or something like that through like with 8 minutes left in the third quarter. So there was like, it wasn't inconceivable. He would have to just continue that whole torrent. But anyway, not a lot of scoring last night from the Raptors, though.
Yeah, no. At one point, I think I tweeted this out. It really did look like Embiid and or Cat might outscore the Raptors. The Raptors ended up pouring it on a little bit in the late third into the fourth. But there was a stretch there where they were like stuck on 70 points late in the third quarter. It was like, man, Embiid might outscore them here.
Was that stretch where the Raptors missed like a whole bunch of layups?
Yeah, and there was
Like
just
Quickley
turnovers
missed a
back and
layup
forth.
and-
They kept getting steals, and then there was the one play where Quickley got blocked by the rim in transition. Basically,
Gary got blocked by John Conchar.
Yeah. Oh, John Conchar had a stretch in that game, and this is so depressing to say, where he had that huge block on one end. Then at the other end, it got dumped off to him. He had another defensive play, and then I maybe hit a three or an offensive rebound or something like that. I remember I had John Conchar in my notes too many times in a row, and I was like, man, even as a great appreciator of the all white boy sleeves team in the NBA, of which John Conchar is a starter, can't abide by John Conchar and Luke Kennard. Like, Luke Kennard was talking smack in that game.
What do you even think Luke Kennard trash talk sounds like, man?
I don't know, man. I still sometimes accidentally think he's French, and it's Luke Kennard. I don't know, man.
Montreal restaurant.
Yeah, it was a bad way. Look, I guess
that was tough. That was a tough game last night, man.
it is.
It can't be like that every game. It really can't. We have to have standards. I know we're like tanking and we're like trying to develop or whatever, but
there's a huge
you need standards.
There's a huge difference between what that looks like when you go 1-3 on a West Coast trip, and you're a call or two away from the Sacramento upset or the Lakers upset, and then you play the Clippers tight, even though it's the second half of back-to-back at the end of a road trip. And Pascal was around for those, and Jakob was around for some of those. I get it, but the level of fight, the level of just relevance that you played with in those games versus what you've played with since the Utah game, and it's so that Miami win is going to stand out as so bizarre compared to the rest of this stretch of play where they just absolutely pummeled the Heat in the middle of losing a ton of depressing games in a row. Since those LA games that we're talking about, they lost by 30 plus to Utah. They shot 4 of 32 on threes against Boston. They had the Miami game. They lost a very winnable game against Chicago. They got punked by the Knicks. And they lost to a Grizzlies team that literally had 8 players out and only had one guy in the starting lineup that was actually a part of the plan to be in the starting lineup, in Jaren Jackson Jr. Like they were playing guys like my guys, fresh from the Memphis Hustle, big minutes in that game.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Jaren Jackson was awesome. Started the game really strong. Faded as the game went on. At least offensively, defensively, he was always good.
6 steals in the first quarter.
Yeah, 6 steals in the first quarter. The Raptors were just throwing the ball away nonstop. It was tough. Also, I respect the fact that he could put it on the deck, but the fact that he like drove and like got by the Raptors with no help largely and scored 4 times just in the first quarter from like, because typical Jaren Jackson play. He catches on the 3 and he up fakes, and sometimes he shoots it. He's a pretty, decent shooter from there. But a lot of times he was just up faking and then just driving or attacking that closeout. And like, I mean, I know he's 6'11". He's super like long, I guess, and fairly strong. I wouldn't say he's like jump out the gym athletic, at least on offense. But like, there's enough time to recover and help and make him swing it to somebody else.
Well, especially when
he scored 4 driving layups in the first quarter. Like, that's a terrible way to start. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and especially when like, look, there are rotation level players around him on that team. Probably no one else right now that should be starting NBA games. So like, you could really overload on Jaren Jackson Jr. if you wanted to, and not like, look, Luke Kennard ended up putting 19 on them. Vince Williams Jr. is cool and had a nice game, but like,
he did that for James Herbert. Yeah,
you're telling me like you're not okay with Santi Aldama and John Conchar knocking down shots if you got to overload on Jaren Jackson. And like, I don't know, man, the one little pump fake and go is just, it wasn't.
Dude, it was like really simplistic moves.
There wasn't enough resistance against him in the first quarter. And it just like, it set a bad tone for the game where, I don't know, I hate doing this kind of analysis because it feels like reductive. It feels too simple. But like, really, at any point in these last couple games, have you felt a fight from this team? Like that they were, going to come back when they were down, that they were going to keep a game from getting away, that there was like, the Knicks game, they just like, they were outclassed. But this one, it just like, it didn't feel like that fight was there, that like, hey, a team that is right with you in the standings is missing 8 players today, is coming into your court, and Luke Kennard is mouthing off to your fans courtside. And it just didn't feel like, other than Scotty turning it on in the second half, which is like a regular story at this point. Like, I don't know, man. Like, Thad was your third best player last night.
Yeah, I was going to say, salute to Thad Young. Really showing everyone like what it means to be a pro and be super committed. He's diving on the floor for loose balls. He's taking charges. He's co-lead for the Raptors in charges taken this year at 4. Like, Kyle used to have like 20 charge seasons. By the way, the Raptors as a team, 16 total charges taken, which is actually middle of the pack in the league, surprisingly. But yeah, in any case, Thad was giving great effort, dunking the ball consistently as well too. I've seen more Thad Young dunks in the last week than I have in his entire tenure as a Raptor. So credit to Thad, but like, you shouldn't really always need your veterans to sort of, go in the way back throwback machine to give you that type of professionalism or that type of effort. Like, you just need to bring it collectively as a group. And right now, you don't see 48 minutes of effort from the Raptors. You just don't. It reminds me so much of what the Tampa season looked like.
Yeah. 19 offensive rebounds for the Grizzlies last night, and the Raptors had 17 turnovers.
David Roddy had like 6 offensive rebounds on the same play.
Yeah. The Raptors.
Like, come on, guys.
Yeah. It's
that's a tough one.
11 additional shooting possessions for the Grizzlies.
Yeah, and it wasn't like the Grizzlies were shooting lights out necessarily. Like, yeah, Luke Kennard got hot for a stretch there in the third quarter, but
he finished 5 of 13 on threes. Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, still better than the Raptors, 8 for 23. I just feel like the Raptors didn't get enough paint touches, and then also, I mean, just in general, you just cannot win in the NBA nowadays if you only take 23 attempts. Like, that to me suggests like a structural problem that took place with the Raptors offense yesterday, where they could only get up 23 attempts.
So I know you want to do a deeper dive on the BBQ guys after. So I'll save this question, but I do want to just mention that we'll get back to it. Emmanuel Quickley took 6 threes last night. Darko said before the game they need him getting up 8 or 9. He still didn't look super, super aggressive. So we'll come back to that when we do the BBQ thing. I guess question for you is, like, in terms of the worst losses that this team has had this season against that shorthanded Grizzlies team on your home court, coming off of a couple bad losses, like, where does that rank for you? Obviously, Detroit is number 1, But the Portland loss was pretty bad. The early season both Chicago losses are pretty bad.
No, but that early season Chicago loss was hilarious. I think Dennis came on afterwards and he's like, that's one of the worst losses I've ever been associated with in my career. And I'm like, damn, you played 10 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Where does that rank for you? Is that like 2 after Detroit? Do we need more time to let it settle in? Because that was one where like, there's not really like, Jakob Poeltl was out, but there's no extenuating circumstances to lose to the zombie Grizzlies on your own court.
Yeah. I mean, I think the one thing, and I think Grange pointed this out in my DMs or the responses after I tweeted on Twitter, I was just like, at least Detroit really did play out of their minds in that game. Like there was multiple like banked in shots. Kevin Knox had his best game of the season. It has to be like, he was hitting buzzer beaters and stuff like that. Cade was playing at high capacity.
You had just made the trade.
You had just made the trade. Second half of back-to-back, you got in at 3 a.m., blah, blah, blah. Like,
what a fun day that was. Like, it was so weird. Like, even though they lost, like, I actually think them losing that game made the whole day, like, even more fun in my memory now.
Sure.
Even though it was torture, but.
Right. At least the Pistons played, like, a really good game, and they beat the Raptors by 1 possession. Like, Raptors never led last night at all. Never had that urgency. And, yeah, I mean, I understand that, like, you can accept that sometimes you don't have it in a season. That's going to happen. But, like, you've had to accept that so many times in the Raptors this season. The fact that we can even have a discussion of, like, how many bad, unfortunate losses the Raptors have had this whole year is just, it's kind of depressing to say, man. What about the Charlotte loss that they had on the road?
Okay, so question for you before we get to Michael Scotto and talk some NBA wide rumors and stuff, talk about the Kyle Lowry trade. The other thing that I wanted to get to from last night and get your take on, with 3.5 minutes left in the game, the Raptors have cut the lead to 12. And I know that sounds like damning with faint praise, but it was against a Memphis team that's that lacking offensively. 12 points in 3.5 minutes is doable. Darko went with Grady Dick.
Yeah.
He hadn't played in the fourth quarter at that point. He comes in for Gary Trent Jr. at that point in the game. Darko kind of said afterwards, like, hey, we got to get him those developmental reps. We want to see him with those closers. What did you think of that decision, given where we were at that point in the game? And that it's not as if Grady had started and played big minutes in that game. He'd only played 11 minutes in the game to that point.
Yeah, I'm happy you pointed that out because it was quite strange to see him in that context. I think part of it was because they probably needed someone else to like stretch the floor, and Gary had been, even though he made 2 threes, probably worse than Grady was, or at least he wasn't really making much impact. So you try out Grady. The issue is then you have a situation where you have a clear defensive liability who's a rookie on the court at the end of a game, and you saw, Vince Williams Jr. look at him dead in the eye, and he's like, all right, I'm kind of just going to hit you with a very simple crossover, and I'm going to drive all the way in for a dunk. And there's no help behind because that was the type of game the Raptors are playing. But, I mean, clearly this is a team that is in need of not just a shakeup because they've had 2 already, but probably more shakeups to come. And so let's bring in Michael Scotto of HoopsHype. Michael, I hope you did not have the displeasure of having to watch Raptors Grizzlies last night.
I did not. Mostly this time of year, it's just on a lot of phone calls late at night, on the East Coast, as late as, past midnight. So been pretty busy with the trade deadline coming up, and Toronto's still going to be active. So should be exciting coming up.
We'll talk about some of the Toronto stuff, but there was news this morning. So let's get your take on that. Kyle Lowry is headed to the Charlotte Hornets for now.
Speaking of down bad.
Miami trading Kyle Lowry and a 2027 lottery protected first to Charlotte for Terry Rozier. This one you sense coming is the timing of the. I guess my biggest question about all of these moves for you is things happening so much earlier than the trade deadline is fairly new for us. What do you make of that? And what did you make of this Lowry Rozier swap?
I mean, cue the Dwayne Wade "I love it" meme, because for me, I love it because for a couple of reasons. One, for the teams that are acquiring the players, it gives them more time to assimilate the player and get them acclimated to what they're doing. People think the trade deadline is around, the halfway point. It's not. You're only at that point looking at maybe 20 plus games or so, depending on the team schedule, 25. So to me, I think that it's good for the teams. And as far as Lowry going to Charlotte, I mean, I would say late last night, there was some word about it going around from a couple people I talked to. And then sure enough, this morning, boom. It shows you how quickly something can kind of materialize. But I think overall for Lowry, with Charlotte, him going there, a lot of people are certainly looking to see if they can flip him again and get something for him. They're obviously looking for future draft picks and core pieces that they can have with Brandon Miller, with LaMelo Ball and Mark Williams. If they could take on a contract and get future picks, I think it is something that they're open to for sure. So I don't think they're done yet. I know a lot of teams are looking at Lowry as a potential buyout candidate, Gordon Hayward as well, but we'll see. I mean, we've seen with veterans when they do hit the market, their value depreciates when they go for a buyout. So, as a player, you got to be willing to accept that at best you're going for, probably a minimum. And then if you're lucky, by the time you hit free agency again in the summer, maybe you can get towards a mid-level exception, but it depends on the player.
Yeah, I think for Kyle's case too, I mean, very competitive guy. We clearly know him a lot in the Toronto market, but he does have a ring, and maybe the desperation isn't as much to chase, but at the same time, I think there's going to be some, wrinkles in the cap that you actually can't just have him, for example, go to the Clippers.
Yeah, so right? for anyone who isn't aware or forgets or whatever, the new collective bargaining agreement will not allow teams that are above the apron to sign buyout candidates who earned more than the mid-level. So Kyle can't go to some of those teams. Philly is probably the highest end team that he could go to because they're a little bit below that apron level. Still some interesting landing spots around Philly, New York, places like that. But yeah, the Clippers are off the table for any of those guys. It's why the Daniel Tice thing was so interesting when the Pacers just agreed to let him go for no reason really, because Tice is like just below the salary point that the Clippers could still sign him. Michael, when you look at what the Heat side of this, look, the Heat are always interested, right? Their name comes up every time a star or a second-tier guy becomes available. That 2027 first-round pick that they have is one of the only assets they really had, unless a team really likes Tyler Hero and the Heat are willing to move off him. Are you surprised that it's Terry Rozier that they were willing to do this for? And I know you made the point of why earlier is better, but I kind of would have thought with Kyle and that pick and some of the other, lower tier prospects they had, maybe they could have aimed a little higher than this.
Well, I mean, the problem is like Cleveland's been telling every team that's called that Donovan Mitchell isn't going anywhere. So obviously that was a guy Miami was looking at. But if you can't get the guy and you're trying to win this year, you got to figure it out. And then next year, Rozier can become a trade asset for you if you want to move him and try to get a bigger fish. Given his contract situation, it's more appealing as he's getting towards the end of his deal. And for Miami, they think that he's a guy that can play well for them in the playoffs and fit their culture. He's a hard worker. This is a guy that in Charlotte hasn't had a chance to play a lot of meaningful games, and now he's going to get that opportunity. They feel like it's going to rejuvenate him a little bit. He's been playing great so far this year if you look at his individual statistics. But I think from Miami's perspective, I don't know if they always agreed with the outside noise that they needed a quote-unquote star. They feel pretty good about Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, and now Terry Rozier is a guy that they're hoping can fit as a high-caliber starting player on that team that essentially fills a role player. He's not being asked to come there and be, an all-star. He's being asked to come there, fit a role, and help them win and make timely shots. But the ball's going through Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. Terry Rozier is your third guy as a scorer. With Tyler Hero some nights, they can alternate between the third and the fourth guy. You got Jaime Jaquez. They've got a nice starting five, and they've always been able to find depth, finding guys off the scrap heap, guys in the G League. So, I mean, for them, they feel like this is going to help put them closer towards the top of the East, and time will tell if that comes to fruition. But in terms of being surprised, I think they scanned the market, and they came to the realization that, all right, well, Donovan Mitchell's not likely to become available before the trade deadline. We got to try to do something to win this season while maintaining some flexibility going forward. And Terry fits that mold.
Yeah, and, I like the fit for them because I feel like for Miami, they have a lot of guys who move and play well without the ball, guys who can space and cut and everything like that, but aside from Jimmy, on-ball threat-wise, now you add Terry to that mix, you make them a little bit more dangerous. Okay, closer to home here in Toronto, the Raptors are not done, right? They've already moved OG. They moved Pascal. The Pascal trade, I don't even consider that completely done because Bruce Brown is there's going to be a market for Bruce Brown. I think he's made that clear. I think the rest of the trade rumors have made that clear. What is that particular market for Bruce Brown at the moment?
Well, what's interesting was the Miami Heat were one of the teams I heard in the mix for him. Now, I don't know how much that changes now following the Terry Rozier trade, because as Blake mentioned, they lost one of the assets they would have had to dangle for him in that first round pick down the line. So the other teams that I've heard, certainly the New York Knicks with Tom Thibodeau, that's very much a match made in heaven. However, at some point I got to wonder, like, how many 6'4" guards can you have on a team? That's just me.
One more, in my opinion. If you're going to give up a first-round pick to the Raptors, I'd say one more you can fit in.
And then you've got, obviously, the Los Angeles Lakers, who they're equally, I think you guys mentioned about how Miami's connected to every player. I'm pretty sure every trade deadline and free agency, the Lakers somehow get connected to every player in creation. So no surprise there, but they obviously wanted Bruce heavily in free agency with the money that they had available at the time. And then another team that I've heard come up, the Dallas Mavericks. They also wanted to get Bruce for the mid-level. They've been looking to upgrade at the 4 and the 3. They love Derek Lively. As I reported on HoopsHype, they've been turning down trade calls for him, even though a lot of teams around the league certainly value him. And obviously in the backcourt, you got Kyrie and Luka. So, they've got some room around the edges to improve. A guy like Bruce would be a good fit there. But those are some of the teams that I've heard particularly interested in trying to acquire Bruce Brown. And it's interesting because when you look at the Raptors and you look at Bruce's age, I mean, if Masai doesn't get what he wants, can you tell me that he could be on that team next year? Maybe. His age fits the timeline. It's not like out of the question.
Contract's flexible.
Yeah, and you could, punt that decision down the line for next year. And obviously they've got Quickley, RJ. You'd have Bruce. Gary Trent Jr., not, I would say, someone that is considered a core member of Toronto. And we touched on this the last time I appeared on your show about how those contract extension talks never came to fruition. And, he's had an up and down season. So to me, I don't think it's out of the question that they keep Bruce if they don't find what they like. They've got the cap flexibility if they want to pick up the option. And then he's an expiring contract, makes him even arguably more valuable in some sentiments. So we'll see. The last thing I would say when I look at the Raptors, this is just me looking at the situation. I'm curious if we're going to hear more Jakob Poeltl chatter coming up. I know he just re-signed with the team, but given the age, do they feel like he's going to fit their core down the line, or is it better to get something now? Clearly, they're building around Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickley, RJ, Barrett. So I'm just going to keep an eye on that one. That's just me.
That'll be interesting.
It's been ugly without a center. Asset-wise, it's like I didn't agree with the trade at the time. The contract is full market value. He is 28. But I don't know. We got to watch these games, the next 30 games, too.
Yeah, for our sake, it'll be tough. But, I mean, the Raptors, as you mentioned, they're 1-7 without Jakob in the stretch here with him missing with an ankle injury. He is due to be back, too. So,
potentially trade. As soon as Friday, yeah.
Yeah. Well, my favorite fake Yak trade is we return him to the Spurs for store credit.
You love this one, eh?
So you don't get your whole first-round pick back, but maybe you change some of the protections so the Raptors can actually freely tank this year if they choose to do so. But, I mean, I don't know. I'm not totally sure what the market for Yak would look like. If they choose to do so,
even if they choose not to, if they don't choose to do so, they lost to the zombie Grizzlies last night. There might be no choose to it, Will.
Yeah, fair enough.
Sorry, Michael, a little lower on the chain. Are you hearing anything about any of the fringier Raps veterans, the Boucher, Schröder types, or is it a little early in this process for like is it more of a, hey, the Bruce Brown types are going to go, Terry Rozier types are going to go first, and then we'll circle back to the mid-level size guys?
Oh, listen, it's like, I would say an Italian Sunday dinner. Everything's on the table.
7 fish. Let's go.
Exactly. Like, as far as Chris Boucher goes, I mean, certainly if you can put him with Gary Trent in a trade, that you can get a lot of higher salary guys there. I don't think his standalone value is just enough to do a trade. But if you package him with a guy like Gary Trent, who's on an expiring contract, I do think that is something that Toronto is going to look at. And then I'm looking more at the expiring contracts. You got guys like Otto Porter, Thad Young, back-end guys that are going to fill a deal. Could I see Dennis Schröder going somewhere? Possibly. all these guys are like, I would say half the Raptors right now, you can tell me are going to be in trade talks in the next couple of weeks at a high level. And I'd nod my head in agreement, just given the way that the roster reconstruction has gone to this point.
Okay. I got two more questions about just former Raptors now at this point. But first, for Pascal Siakam, you mentioned earlier about, rival teams have maybe asked about like a Derek Lively, but the Mavs clearly value him, and he's a huge position of need for them. Were there any talks between the Raptors and Dallas, for Pascal, for example?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they talked, but I just like as far as assets go, I didn't think that – I never thought that was going to be the ultimate landing spot, because while they were having those talks, they were also keeping tabs a little bit on Jeremy Grant, as I had touched on, and then Kyle Kuzma's another name. So if you've got that many backup options in mind, somewhere along the line, you've got to be saying to yourself, realistically, this probably isn't going to come to fruition.
Got you. And then the other one, just about OG. Clearly, he's done well in New York. Knicks are like 9-2 with OG, best defense in the league, best plus-minus in the league.
Plus-minus of infinity.
Yeah. It's basically a virtual guarantee that OG's re-signing in New York, right? But like, in terms of like the number where it might come in at ultimately, do you have any idea on that?
I mean, a lot of rival executives certainly think that he's going to end up back with the Knicks for a number of reasons. I mean, certainly he's Tom Thibodeau's type of guy. Some kind of comparisons I feel like he's drawn a little bit is when Luol Deng was in his prime and an all-star guy. Kind of fits that mold, high minutes, can play both sides of the ball. As far as the number with the Knicks, I mean, it's going to be over $30 million. The question is where, because you got to also factor in. Now, when I say $30 million, do I mean exactly $30 million? No. I'm sure the aggregators will want some specifics. It's somewhere over 30. Time will tell. But they also have to figure out Jalen Brunson down the line as far as potentially looking at him for an extension, and he's going to certainly get a significant pay raise, and it's well deserved. So they're going to factor all that in. But yeah, definitely he's a guy that a lot of people around the league, from most executives I've spoken to, believe that he will ultimately re-sign with New York. And it's certainly worth noting that at CAA, he's got a couple of agents, and one of them happens to be Sam Rose. Now, if that name rings a bell, that's because that's Leon Rose's son. So, you can read between the lines on that one, but certainly the phrase "keep it in the family" certainly comes to mind when I think of OG Anunoby and the Knicks, and eventually getting a deal done. And he's going to earn a big pay raise for sure.
He deserves it.
They're acting awful New Jersey and New York these days when it comes to the family. Michael, before we let you go, you're also in Brooklyn a bunch. What do you make of where the Nets are right now? What direction? The Nets are kind of...
Dude,
I mean, they're only two games.
They're
only two games up on the Raptors, and it's not any sexier watching them. Even though there are some nice pieces there, obviously, are they on a precipice of maybe becoming sellers as well? Or are they still trying to ride this thing out?
My thing is they got to pick a direction at a certain point, because you've given up all these picks to get James Harden. So Houston pretty much runs the show with their drafts, whether it's swaps or outright picks. So they're not good enough right now. They know that. The difference now is when Sean Marks came there years ago, and they already were owing picks to Boston for the KG Paul Pierce trade, it didn't matter to Sean because it was a clean slate for him. Now, I'm curious how the optics of him trading for James Harden are going to affect things, because to me, they have certainly a bunch of guys that they can sell off if they choose. Spencer Dinwiddie's a guy, Dorian Finney-Smith is a guy, and Royce O'Neal. Now, I've touched on this on HoopsHype, but I'll share it for your listeners as well in case they may not have seen previous articles on HoopsHype. For Dorian Finney-Smith, ideally they'd like the equivalent of 2 first-round picks. Now, does that mean just 2 straight first-round picks? No, that doesn't mean that. It could be a first-round pick. It could be a rotation player. It could be a young player. But essentially the equivalent of 2 first-round picks. Royce O'Neal, in an ideal world, they'd like to get a first-round pick later in the first round, somewhere in the 20s. Does that mean it's going to happen? Could be protected. If not, can they get a boatload of second-round picks? I'm pretty sure they could. But he is a fan favorite of some Nets fans, and also just with Jack Vaughn. Jack Vaughn loves Royce O'Neal. So something to keep in mind there. And also he's a good friend of Donovan Mitchell. So if they're going to make a run for Donovan Mitchell and he's with the team past the deadline, I would just keep that one under your hat for down the line. Wow. Regarding Spencer Dinwiddie, he's had a kind of up and down role a little bit this year, even though he's been the starting point guard. And there are some contending teams that could look at him in the final year of his contract as a rental that could be worthwhile. I think now as the Terry Rozier trade went down, you're going to see more calls on that front. Also with Toronto, I know because you guys had tried to trade for Nick Claxton previously, people asked me about him and his future. But by all accounts, the Nets are making it seem like they're going to pay him in the offseason. And then you can kind of go from there if you're going to keep him not long term. Maybe you flip him down the line, but they don't want to lose an asset like Nick Claxton for nothing. He is unrestricted, but they've got the ability to pay him as much as they want. So that's kind of the landscape as far as Brooklyn goes. They don't have an incentive to tank given the fact of all the draft pick compensation, but I don't know if there's a move, and this includes DeJounte Murray that's been kind of floated out there. I don't know if DeJounte Murray is going to take them to a higher level either. He's been playing great, and they have, Dinwiddie's contract would fit what I've reported that Atlanta doesn't want to ideally take back salaries, but are they willing to give up 2 first-round picks? I'd previously reported they've shied away from that in Brooklyn. So, I mean, time will tell. We still got about, 2 weeks plus a little bit before the trade deadline. But at least as of right now, still surveying the market. And potentially, if they did want to go that route and you get a pick or maybe 2 for Dorian Finney-Smith, do you then maybe change your stance and say, well, now we have extra capital in the draft and maybe then it makes more sense to go for DeJounte. Maybe we can use other picks. There's a lot of dominoes that are still yet to fall in Brooklyn. Certainly with the Knicks, Raptors, that whole division is pretty interesting. Not everybody's like Boston where they're at the top of the heap. So.
Or scoring 70 points like they are in Philadelphia.
Oh, Philadelphia's not done either. I know that much. Daryl Morey will do something.
They've got the picks as well from the James Harden trade to get something done. They've got cap flexibility in the future to take on a guy. You guys touched on Kyle Lowry a little bit earlier. I think with Kyle, certainly he'd be a good fit there as a backup point guard, Villanova guy. It makes logistical sense. But there's going to be, if he hits the buyout market, there is going to be a bevy of suitors for him. I think that, when you've got a guy that's a proven playoff guy and won a ring, it all matters. As long as he's willing to come in and get, rotation minutes, it'd be worthwhile for sure. But been a crazy time in Raptorland when you look at how that team won, that won the chip. Now it's like Chris Boucher is there, and you look around and you feel like Will Smith in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air when they move out.
Yeah, I know. You're telling us, man. We're now talking about Kyle Lowry as a buyout guy. Well, the times have really moved on. Michael, appreciate you. I'm sure you're really busy, so I appreciate you taking the time. Everyone go find his work over at HoopsHype, host of the HoopsHype podcast as well. Lots of great details, as you can tell. So appreciate you, and we'll call you soon.
You got it, fellas. Anytime.
Okay. Yeah, lots of digest there, but let's take a quick break.
By the way, we have a minute here. Dennis is getting bumped to 3 o'clock, so we don't do rush. I would like to get your live reaction to something, actually. Go look at the Raptors 905 Twitter account. They just released the jersey that they'll wear next Wednesday on January 31st for Lunar New Year. It's the Year of the Dragon jersey. I want your quick take on it.
Oh, yeah, this is nice. Oh, yeah, this is nice.
That's real good, right?
This is really nice. Why don't we have creativity with the Raptors jerseys?
I don't know. They put out tweets.
This is really good, though. I like this.
They put out tweets explaining what exactly has gone into the jerseys, and there are nods to like the early Vince Carter era jerseys and things like that, in addition to a number of things in there for Lunar New Year. So you can check out the details at Raptors 905 on Twitter. This is where we miss Alex even more because I bet he would be able to get a couple of those for us. I don't know if I have those pulls even down in 905 land, but
if you don't have pulls in 905 land, who does?
I did manage to get Alex that Degrassi 905 shirt for his last day, but
that was an elite gift.
Yeah, we'll see. It's a really nice jersey, Raptors 905. You can check that out. They're wearing it next Wednesday. They also have an 11 a.m. game tomorrow, which I did the math on. I can't make it there and then safely make it back to the show. So
I can call you from.
I'll be watching here. All right, now we can take that break. I just wanted your reaction to that jersey because it's
a great jersey.
Yeah, and, quick look for me. That looks awesome.
I wonder who is Asian and also does Raptors media that could help promote this. Call my line. Okay, we are going to take a quick break. Shameless on my part, but
you're trying to get in the Filipino Heritage Night basketball run later this week. You're trying to get free Lunar New Year jerseys.
What's up? I'll bring my little
versatility
bro,
here.
for that one.
The versatility here is unbelievable.
Okay, all right, we're gonna take this break. I've been your host Willow. You've been listening to the Raptor Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Welcome back to the Raptor Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host Wayne Lou. Got Blake Murphy with me, and we are gonna do. Probably something we're going to do quite often this season for the rest of the year is the BBQ report. Do we have a better name than a BBQ report? Like a BBQ order, BBQ delivery. Oh, the Bucks have dismissed Adrian Griffin.
Wow. Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN.
That was my bold prediction of the year. Sorry, Griff. I'm so sorry that you got dismissed, but damn.
Yeah, the Milwaukee Bucks, who, by the way,
that's not
are 30-13.
Okay.
Coming off of a couple wins in a row here.
Damn.
But they do have the worst defense of any playoff team right now, still at this point in the season.
Yo, I mean, you could see this one coming only in the sense that there's been so many reports. Remember there was like the, who was it? Bobby Portis was
10 games in the year or something like that. 5 games in the year.
He was upset with him. They argued, but it was like immediately reported. Yep. Like everyone was still in the building, and that Chris Haynes already had a full report on the whole thing.
Yeah,
I wonder if Dame or Giannis made the phone call. But
Eric Name came on our show. Eric Name, who covers the Bucks for the Athletic, came on our show 5 games into the season when the Bucks were here, right before the Raptors pasted them.
Yeah.
And there was some confusion at that point about what exactly the defensive game plan was there. Like part of the reason they needed to move on from Mike Budenholzer was that there was an inflexibility defensively, stylistically on both ends, and that maybe didn't have them as playoff prepared as they needed to be year over year.
Yeah.
The question with Adrian Griffin immediately became like, well, okay, but like, it's still got to be good. You can't just do other things that are bad. Like he had Brook Lopez trapping. He had like the #1 drop back center defensively, like a defensive player of the year candidate in drop back coverage, suddenly coming out and trapping and hedging and stuff like that in ways that they weren't used to and didn't suit the personnel. And look, he wasn't dealt the best of hands given the defensive personnel on that trade.
He was dealt the best of hands, man. He got Dame, he got Giannis, he got ready to win now veterans.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Defensively,
like,
though,
this, man.
it's not. He holds it. I just mean like you swap out Drew for Dame and Malik Beasley's your stopper. It's not great defensively, but you've made no progress. Over the course of the year. And you still have Giannis and Brook Lopez, and like it's not like Beasley's a bad defender. It's pretty inexcusable for a team with title hopes to be the worst defense among playoff teams. And sorry, I should correct myself. The Pacers are technically in a playoff spot right now. I was only looking at teams outside the play-in. But okay, the second worst defense of any team in a playoff spot right now. So that's pretty tough. But I think as details come out about this, what we're going to find out is more than the defense on the court.
Yeah.
This is going to be like he doesn't have the room.
So who's going to even be available to come in and replace? Because they went through the coaching search.
So Terry Stotts going to come back?
Terry Stotts coming back would be hilarious.
So for anyone who doesn't remember, Terry Stotts was originally like the lead offensive assistant. Adrian Griffin as a first-time coach. They wanted some experienced coaches around him. Terry Stotts walked away because of friction between them and how Stotts was dealing with the superstars versus working in the team dynamic. It ended up Trevor Gleason, who was a Raptors assistant, ultimately ended up replacing Terry Stotts on that staff. So I don't know, man. I don't know what you do here.
Yeah. Can I ask you the problematic question? It's not entirely fair, but
Joe Prunty is going to be the interim coach.
Oh, of course. Joe Prunty's been the interim coach for Milwaukee a few times, I feel like now. Like This is not the first time we've seen him in an interim
Yeah, he
setting.
was the interim coach for the Atlanta Hawks before they went the Quinn Snyder route.
Yeah.
He was the interim coach for the Bucks between Jason Kidd and Mike Budenholzer.
Yeah.
And is now the interim coach between Adrian Griffin and whoever's
He's just a permanent
next.
interim coach. He's like the quad A type of player, but for coaches.
He's also got 3 rings as an assistant, but hasn't got an actual shot as a head coach, even though he's been in the league since 1996 and as assistant.
He the Phil Jackson of interim coaches?
Yeah, I guess so.
No, okay, well, we'll see like what the ultimate decision is made there.
Sorry to react to my phone with faces, but this is the time of year. Chris Haynes is reporting that the Bucks will strongly consider Doc Rivers.
Ooh.
What was your problematic throw-out going to be?
What's going on with the Nick Nurse coaching tree, man? Second time in a row now.
Chris Finch looking all right, though.
Chris Finch was with Nick for like a couple months.
Yeah.
I don't even count that.
They were rivals for a lot longer than they were together.
He needed a job. Toronto was there, and then midway through the season, he got hired from Minnesota, and he's done a good job coaching that team. But
Nate Bjorkgren didn't last the season in Indiana, and Adrian Griffin didn't last the season in Milwaukee.
Yeah. Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it could just be a coincidence.
And
But,
look, Adrian Griffin is not like Nate Bjorkgren was Nick Nurse's guy, right? Like those two, they were in the basement. They were in the lab in the G League.
They were in the basement together in Iowa in 2010, putting up like whatever plays into an Excel spreadsheet.
You know in 8 Mile when Eminem's riding the bus,
and
he's like scribbling down his ciphers.
Yeah.
Knowing what G League coaches made around 2010, that's probably how Nick Nurse and Nate Bjorkgren were designing their plays. They're just like riding the bus to practices and games.
They're taking public transit. Yeah. Sounds about right.
But this is like Adrian Griffin has been a longtime assistant in the NBA, was a longtime NBA player, and had interviewed for head coaching jobs multiple times.
Yeah, this is unfortunate. I'm sorry I celebrated. It's only because of this is exactly what I called.
No, you were right. But like the warning signs were there. Like again, Eric came on our show 5 games into the year, and we were all together like, what the heck is the defense? And then I remember that one, like we were at that game, and I think you were around as I was talking to someone from the Bucks about some of that. And it was like very unclear what the defensive plan was. And there were multiple times throughout the course of the season already, over 50 games, where there were leaks. There was drama in the locker room. There were quotes that made it seem like everyone definitely wasn't on the same page. I don't think, Doc Rivers, who has some of the same criticisms that Mike Budenholzer has, right? Like, hey, really good regular season coach, really good get buy-in from everyone coach, has a ring, but should probably have had more playoff success at this point, given the pieces that he had. There are some similar criticisms there. But yeah, this is This is a what? Like they're in second in the East, man.
Didn't they also have the situation where it was like when they were looking for coaches in the offseason, they would bring the candidates to Giannis's house?
Yeah.
For a vibe check, essentially.
Yeah. And
so
like,
he could pick.
Yeah, like culturally.
Wasn't Nick
like
one of the guys too? Like they could have had Nick.
The reporting was Nick pulled himself out.
Oh, he did? Okay.
So whether that was seeing the writing on the wall and not wanting it, not think it's a fit, or the Philly deal was more real. And by the way, I said Milwaukee is second in the East. They have the second best record in the NBA.
Oh yeah.
Boston is the only team with a better record than them, and they just fire the coach.
This is the thing though, that if they were to go into playoffs that unprepared defensively, they were not going to make it very far. They were right for another upset.
Yep. And that's
they might still be, by the way. It's not like Doc Rivers' teams have not been upset before.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, they get upset in the second round. They can't do the first round again. Like it was the first round they got bounced last year, right?
No, last year it was also second round.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Either way, not great. So this is where they're at. They're 21st in defensive efficiency overall. And part of the criticism that I have had with them, and I think part of the criticism at large, is their changes defensively were about being more versatile and things like that. But they have not gotten any of the benefits of a more aggressive defense. They're dead last by far in how many turnovers they force. So, like, if you're going to sacrifice defensive rebounding a little bit, if you're going to sacrifice your ability to protect the paint, and with that, you're not getting any turnovers, you're not fueling the transition game at all, it's bleak. They were the number 4 offense, though. Like, I guess when you have Dame and Giannis, that kind of sorts itself out, right?
At a peak level, Dame is like, as good as a number 2 gets really in the NBA offensively. So, yeah, I mean, that was always going to work. But defensively, they need to hit another level. We'll see what Doc Rivers, I mean,
they also.
I'm gonna miss. By the way, I'm gonna miss media Doc. I really do like when Doc is like on podcasts talking to KG and Paul Pierce. I miss when he's on like Bill Simmons' podcast, or when he's calling games. Like, actually, gonna miss media Doc.
Yeah,
but I guess
not a doctor.
Yeah, well, we get to make fun of him, I guess, as a head coach. But whatever.
Also, like, he's going to, like, media doc is still kind of there as the head coach of a prominent team that's always on national TV, right? By the way, with respect to the Bucks, things had also been getting worse defensively. They're 26th since Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, they just don't. They like scrap by teams that they really shouldn't need to scrape by.
Here are the teams that are worse than them defensively since Christmas. Charlotte, who just traded away Terry Rozier because they won a game and can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Portland, Detroit, and Golden State.
Oh.
You thought I was going to say the Raptors?
Yeah, I thought you were
Raptors are 2 spots ahead of them. Washington and San Antonio are the other teams that round out the bottom of that group. So, like of all those teams, including Toronto, Golden State is the only one of those teams that remotely considers themselves a contender.
Yeah, I mean, they just never felt bought in, man. They just really never felt bought in. But
and that's tough, man. When you have a superstar in his prime, you fire a coach you want to ring with.
Yeah.
Then you go out and trade every asset you have left in the cupboard and a guy that was really well loved in Drew Holiday for Damian Lillard. That sets, first of all, Dame's like almost in his mid-30s too. Like, that is we have to win another championship right now.
Oh, yeah.
And for you to go into the season and so quickly be unsure of the coaching, like, this is a huge knock, I think, on their front office and their organization to have not nailed this coaching hire. It was way too high leverage to be turning around 53 games in with the second best record, being like, no, this isn't it. We got to make a change. It's a huge failure.
The only thing I would say is I do feel like when they traded for Dame just before the season started and how much of a surprise factor it was, because everyone in the summertime thought Dame was going to Miami, and only later on in the process was like, maybe Toronto's involved, maybe Milwaukee's involved, and then boom, Milwaukee actually gets it done. I think it definitely changed a lot of what he might have wanted to do defensively with that group. But, like, I mean, you got to be able to adjust, you know?
Also, as a coach, you're getting told,
you're
like,
getting Dame,
hey, you're going to have to redo some things defensively. Don't worry. The offense is solved.
Yeah, exactly.
You will never have to worry about this team scoring buckets, especially in crunch time.
Yeah, and I think it's really difficult for rookie head coaches to come in and just get that buy-in. I think that's one of the things, the more I think back on it, I'm like, when the Raptors made a decision in 2018 and they hired Nick, by the way, similar situation. They hired Nick, and they didn't know that they were going to get Kawhi. That only happened like 2-3 weeks later on.
Just ask Dwayne Casey.
Dwayne Casey at that Coach of the Year award being like, thanks for nothing, guys. I have no team. I'm employable if you would like to hire the Coach of the Year. But like when Nick took over, he had a changing situation, but he was able to get everyone to buy in. Like, that was not an easy season to manage, man. Kyle was upset, wasn't talking to people, especially was super furious with management because of the DeMar DeRozan trade. You know, obviously a lot of the other guys were really attached to DeMar. Who was going to start, you know, in the starting five? It was a question for a while. Luckily, Pascal broke on and became most improved and had a great year, and that solved itself. But coming into the season, that was a big question. Was Kawhi even going to show up? That was a huge question. Was Kawhi going to integrate with the group? You know, who was going to start at shooting guard, for example? I guess Danny kind of walked into that one, made things easy. He's a great pro. But, like, still, ultimately, there's a lot of things to manage. And he was also having to replace a coach who literally just won Coach of the Year. And whatever, things had run its course. But in hindsight, it was so impressive what Nick did, walking into the room and getting it to not just play cohesively, but play distinctly with his style, with the unique defense and stuff like that.
This is Nicky Nurse, baby.
It was Nicky Nurse, baby. And honestly, like, essentially, they kind of needed a repeat of that situation here in Milwaukee, and they just did not get it here. And
they did not. It's man. So, okay, so for anyone who's just tuned in and missed the news, the Milwaukee Bucks, who have the second best record in all of basketball and a top 5 offense, fired Adrian Griffin.
Yeah.
Doc Rivers at the top of the list. That Woj is saying will include other top names and well-established names, which it's funny to me now that they're just going to, like, watch the Thursday night broadcasts and be like, who do we like the best? Mark Jackson? One of the Vans Gundy? Doc Rivers? I don't know. JJ Redick, you want to try the coaching thing again?
Yeah. Wow. They're just they're coming at the media industry, you know?
Yeah. Joe Prunty, man. This is
Joe Prunty, buddy. Enjoy your one game coaching this team as an interim. You know, you deserve it, man. I hope you stick around too with the next staff, because you're not even gonna be able to restaff your team. You're gonna have to just roll with the assistant staff.
Nah,
but
this is it, man. You maybe bring one piece in or something like that. You're consigliere, but that's about it.
I hope Doc likes to golf in Milwaukee. But anyway,
what time of year do you think it is?
I mean, I'm just being sarcastic, you know. I've never even played golf in my life. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. I've been your host, Willow. You've been listening to The Raptor Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Welcome back to the Raptors show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Swim Lou. Got Blake Murphy here too, co-host of the Raptors show. Exactly where he should be. What was I gonna say? You know what? Upon reflection, it's a little rude. Should not have put my arms up. You know, I respect Griff. The guy's worked hard to get to an assistant spot. He's grinded as an assistant for like 10 years. You know, was part of the Raptors core. So I do feel bad for him. I just somehow feel better about my predictions overall.
Yeah, I mean, you were right about it. It's also an entertainment product, and that's fine.
I know,
it's also like
I'm
there's
just a nice human being, man. I don't want.
Yeah, I understand. I just didn't think your reaction was anything other than like, you know, hashtag this league kind of. That's all.
It was hashtag this league type of moment. For
as
sure.
As someone pointed out on Twitter, fireable offense to only beat the Pistons by single digits.
Oh yeah. That's what I mean. They won a couple teams. Yeah.
It's Oh, someone also, Rich Hoffman, who covers the 76ers, pointing out that the funniest part. So we were talking off air about like, okay, so Philly made it to the second round every year under Doc and had to make a change. Milwaukee knocked out in the first round last year. Doc facing the Sixers in the second round this year in a like the immovable object against the irresistible force. But it's like neither of these two can get past the second round. Someone has to win.
Yeah.
And the Miami Heat sweep in and somehow win a series they're not even involved in.
It should be like Game 7, and they take the Kawhi Leonard shot essentially, and it's
just
a wedgie.
Yeah.
Is this the dagger? No, it's a wedgie with no time on the clock. What do you even do in that situation? You just go to overtime, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, a wedgie's a jump ball, so your time would be out. But it would be more like existentially, I think the NBA would just have to waive it. Like Adam Silver's going to run out and be like, I'm enjoying all the banter, but this series cannot continue. Whoever won the other series is just going to the finals.
Would you take Milwaukee right now to come out the East? Because I think preseason-wise, maybe all three of us had picked Milwaukee to win.
I certainly did.
It was partially because I dislike Boston. I mean, I'll give them that credit. But I also did believe in the Milwaukee like core, and there's obviously lots of reason to believe in it. You got Dame and Giannis with a good supporting cast.
Also, like coming off of a really good, like the issue with Budenholzer was never that they were bad defensively. And yes, Drew Holiday to Dame is a big downgrade defensively, but theoretically they should have still been at least a decent defense, and all the offensive issues were fixed.
Yeah. But would you have picked Milwaukee, having seen half a year of basketball now?
No, I changed pretty quickly, pretty early on to Boston. I think when we did like our quarter-way check-in and Alex offered us the mulligans on our over-unders, I didn't take any there, but Milwaukee to come out of the East was one I was like, Unfortunately, it looks like Boston. Although, I don't know, Joel Embiid's dropping 70 pieces.
That's not any better for me, man. It's not better for me as a Raptor fan to be like, oh, you know what? The Sixers might upset Boston.
What if Kyle landed there as a bio guy? Could you get there?
Like, would you
put Philly a little bit ahead of? This is just for us, because there were reports around the time that Kyle got traded to Miami that he wasn't as eager about Philly as maybe people had assumed.
Yeah,
and part of that was probably the contract stuff. Like, just there wasn't the money there for him that there was in Miami. But let's say theoretically it plays out. He lands on Philly. Your tolerability rankings, who you could stomach coming out of the East, would Philly go ahead of Boston then?
I cannot stress this enough. If you have a basketball team coached by Nick Nurse, with Joel Embiid as the front man, with Kyle Lowry,
Patrick
Beverly, all in the same squad,
and one of the Morris brothers,
and a Morris brother on the same squad. Yo, I'm sorry, I can't get behind that. I'm sorry, man. As much as I love Kyle, but no, I can't get behind that as a basketball consumer. Like, would it be a competitive team? Absolutely. Would it make them more competitive? Sure, to some degree. But wow, that would be hard to stomach, man. They might, the referees might need to, like, I don't know. They should get paid double. They should get paid double, triple for.
No, you know what they should do? It shouldn't be they get paid. Like, Ben Taylor should be forced to referee those games. That should be his punishment for the Ben Taylor of it all.
Yeah. By the way, there was that play last night where RJ didn't get a call going to the basket, and RJ's usually been pretty reserved, I would say. Like he doesn't stop in the middle of plays to complain. Like he'll wait for a stoppage and play and then go campaign. I'm cool with that to some degree. There was a play in the first half, I believe, where he went to the basket, clearly got slapped, and then didn't get the call, and he like did an air punch, but it was like right beside the referee. Like, it wasn't quite like when Vince Carter like jumped over Frederick Weiss at the Olympics and then almost clocked Kevin Garnett, who came over to celebrate with them. But, you know, there was a real fervor behind that punch.
Yeah,
So that's probably what's going to happen in Philadelphia if Ben Taylor has to officiate their games.
Yeah, but I do think that that's the right punishment. You want to be the star of the game? Let's put you refereeing a team where they'll put the ref front and center. They have no issue with that. Yeah. So anyway, elsewhere in the NBA last night, in addition to the Embiid Cat stuff and the Adrian Griffin stuff and the Kyle Lowry trade, what a day. The Raptors lost to the Memphis Grizzlies, and we're gonna have Dennis on the line momentarily here. I guess at some point we have to circle back and talk about the game.
Yeah,
I kind of just want to get Dennis's take on being a player when chaotic NBA days hit like this, though.
Well, I mean, you get used to them to a certain degree. I think that's a large part what the money is for. As we're hearing rattling in the studio. What is going on behind there, man?
I have no idea.
We're going to figure that out later. Dennis Schröder join us on the line once again. Dennis, breaking news in the NBA right now. We just saw that the Bucks have let go of Mike Budenholzer. Oh, sorry, Mike Budenholzer. Sorry, that's a previous head coach. I'm just looking at you. They had let go, but last summer they let go of Adrian Griffin, and it seems like Doc Rivers might come in. Yeah. What's your initial reaction to this?
Oh, that's surprising. But I mean, sometimes it don't work out. The organization don't feel that is it's the right fit. I heard a lot of stuff the players talked about, but I mean, whatever they decide, I hope they're gonna be good.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, closer to home, Raptors lose last night to the Grizzlies. I mean, look, it's obviously disappointing because as you and I talked about it before the game, like you guys are still trying to win. You guys still think that there's like a really good chance here. There's a good group here. But when you see it on the court sometimes, I think last night you guys got up to a bit of a slow start. It was difficult to get going once, Memphis had the lead and they had momentum. But what happened last night against the Grizzlies? Like, what do you think was sort of the issue behind the loss?
Yeah, I think it's frustrating for sure to lose that game. Especially they had a lot of people out, but they still, been able to get some road wins. But it's really disappointing. I think we should have, won that game. But we didn't really come out right, it didn't have the 48 minutes, mentality, getting off of a good start and making sure, we get this W. And I mean, we for sure want to make the playoffs. That's my goal. I want to make the playoffs, and we got to figure out a way. And I mean, we got 3 days off now, and get to practicing tomorrow, the day after, and get on the same page because we got a lot of new players as well, and then we go from there.
Dennis, I don't mean this as an excuse for you guys, but you have been playing without Jakob Poeltl. How much does that change what you guys are trying to do on the defensive end? I think specifically you mentioned you guys got out to a bad start yesterday. Jaren Jackson kind of cooking early on there. How have you guys had to change things without Jakob in the lineup these last couple of weeks?
I mean, Jakob is I keep saying it, like he's one of the best big men who can set screens, catch the ball, finish one to win, blocking shots, changing shots. I'm not saying he is a Joel Embiid type player, but I mean as a center, just for about winning, a winning organization, I think he's a great piece. And of course, what the Toronto Raptors want to do, I think he fit right in. And that's the reason why he got that contract. And of course, right now, he's missing a lot. But I think, Jonte, they're still doing a great job. It's not just, them. I think it's just a team thing. We just got to be mindful of playing for 48 minutes. Can't have those, like 2-3 minutes where we didn't really score and don't get stops either, and they get off a like a 10-0 or 15-2 run. Can't have those, and if we locked into that, we get a chance to win the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think because of the trades too, the roster is a lot smaller. Like at the start of the season, with the group, a lot of times you were the only guard on the court. It was you in the starting lineup. OG playing 2, Pascal playing 3 or 4, Scotty playing 4 or 3, whatever, and then Jakob. Like, that's a really tall lineup that you would typically see in the league. Now, a lot of games, like I think in the games against the Bulls, you guys went small to close. It was you, Quickley, Gary, and I think Bruce Brown alongside of Scotty. Like, that's 4 guys that are 6'4" and under. So when you guys are playing smaller like that, I know you got that experience from OKC. What are some of the things that you guys need to do as the guards to sort of make sure that there aren't games where you guys give up like 20 offensive rebounds, for example, like last night to the Grizzlies?
Yeah, we got to rebound. I think that's a big emphasis of what we're trying to accomplish now the next couple of games. Give us a chance to win games here when we rebound. And I think we had those problems a little bit when we was a big lineup as well, beginning of the season, but we just got to, do it in practice and then create a habit, that we're doing it every single time when the ball goes up, find our man, box out, and secure the rebound because we want to play fast in transition. So that's the reason why we sometimes, try to leak out,
Right.
and we can't have those. And we just got to secure that rebound and then play, transition offense from there.
Hey, Dennis, one last question from yesterday's game. But I noticed, I think the Grizzlies got called for defensive 3 seconds last night at one point. I think in the third quarter. And you had gotten the ball and you were standing at the line. And then Scotty came over, kind of tapped you on, the chest. And then eventually Scotty took the free throw. Now, Scotty made the free throw. But I'm just curious, in terms of like in the NBA, like what's the typical process in terms of deciding who shoots those technical free throws when anybody on the court could shoot those?
I mean, whoever got the best, free throw percentage, I think is really important. It's a big free throw. You need every single point you can get. So I mean, he came to me and I mean, he played great. And he said, "I want to take that free throw." I was like, "Yo, you sure?" He said, "Yes, I'm stepping up." And I was like, "Okay, make it." I don't have no problem with giving up the free throw. But at the end of the day, like we got that point. And Scotty made it, so he can take the next one as well.
Yeah, he was 9 for 9 from the foul line last night. But to your credit, you are leading the team in field free throw percentage at 86.6. Yeah. I'm gonna round up for Dennis.
Yeah, we'll round it up.
Yeah, we'll round it up.
It's almost 90, really, when you think about it. Yeah,
which basically 100. Yeah.
This is me talking about grade 12 teachers, man. When I'm trying to apply for university,
we'll go as high as Jose Calderon's record. We're not going higher than that, but we'll round it up to that one.
Yeah, he was at 98, I think.
I'm gonna get to 90 end of the season.
Okay,
all right,
that's my goal.
Okay,
hold you to that.
Okay, so Dennis, we've talked a lot about the new players that you guys have brought in and trying to work them in. A couple games back, you guys were in New York and you got to see a few of those guys. And I know you'd only spent half a season with OG and Malachi and Precious, but I know that you worked pretty closely with Malachi, trying to bring him along. Doing your shooting competitions together and stuff like that. How was that experience going back up against those guys so soon after the trade?
I mean, first of all, great guys, Precious, OG, and Mel. I had a great time with them for a few months. Good to see him every single day, working with them. I mean, to Mel, you guys know we had a good relationship. We seen him the day before in New York too, played a little cards and, was just talking, went to dinner as well, talked about life and how he likes it there and his change. Precious and OG I seen at the game, and talked to OG in the back in the locker room and just, because I think like he changing the whole organization from them, and he doing a really great job of like his plus minus since he got there is insane. So I mean, I'm really happy for him. He likes it, and that's what it's all about, just to be happy. And I think it's really, really important for them to, for him to keep grinding. Mel as well, when he get his chance to get on the game, just to, give everything he can to get on the floor and get that rotation minutes, and Precious as well. He killed us. He played really well against us. and yeah, he went off. But like I said, like they my brothers, and really happy for them. And yeah, keep going.
Yeah. Well, you're seeing other changes too, right? On the flip side, you see RJ and Emmanuel coming in, and RJ I think has hit the ground running. Like he's shooting really effectively from the field. He's got a high field goal percentage. A lot of times he's leading your guys in scoring. I think for Quickley, he's been kind of up and down. And I want to ask you this because you also made a similar transition where you were really effective off the bench, and then eventually you got a chance to start, and how that kind of changed in your approach. Now I think it was within the same team. It was all in Atlanta. You didn't change teams like Quickley did mid-season, coming from New York to Toronto. But what was that adjustment like when you went from being the spark off the bench, you could score a lot, you can have the ball in your hands a lot, versus when you're starting and you got to set the table and make sure everyone's involved in addition to scoring as well?
I mean, he gotta do. He just got to go through it. He never experienced that. He's still young. His fourth year in the league, new team as well. But I think he's doing a great job because he's just a good guy. I think he's doing a great job of keeping everybody engaged, being good with everybody. On the court, I think he just got to be aggressive. He just got to be aggressive when two people is on him, he just got to pass it out. It's that simple. And sometimes he's thinking too much, and I know where it's coming from, but I mean, he just got to be aggressive, and I think he's gonna, find it real quick, or real soon. Let's say it that way. And he's just getting comfortable, in that position, making sure everybody's involved. You got to find the good rhythm with Scotty. And I think then he's going to be good. He's going to be real good for us.
How much do you find yourself talking to him over the course of the game, whether at at a timeout, in a huddle, halftime, things like that? Do you find yourself doing that pretty actively? Like, hey man, you could be a little bit more aggressive here. Look for your shot here. I see this opportunity for you here against this defense.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I try to talk to him when I see something. I try to make him better for just having a good conversation, telling him, listen, I think this is what you got to do. But being aggressive don't mean shoot 20, 30 shots. Just being aggressive, getting to the rim, and then make the decision, for your teammates and for the best of this team, And I think he just can't think too much. If he, think too much, then he start guessing, and he just got to go, be aggressive, be himself. And I think then he's going to be just fine.
Yeah. Well, he's a young guard. We've already seen like the upside too. He can really shoot the three. I think he's just not shooting that well in the paint right now, but clearly has that ability to shift speeds and get into the paint. So I'm hoping to see him because he's going to be here a long time for the Raptors, and just seeing his growth. Now, one thing I've been wanted to ask you for a while was just, you've played with a lot of great teammates in your career. You were in Boston, you played with those guys. The Lakers, you just came from LeBron and AD, enough said. Even before that, you were playing with All-Stars. OKC, you're playing with All-Stars. So I wanted to do a thing where we just kind of draft a starting five of former teammates that you've played with before. Now, I'm going to take you out of this equation. I'm going to take the current Raptors out of this equation. I just talk about former teammates. But if you're cool with that, I want to actually just draft like an all-time five, Dennis Schröder five, you know what I mean, of former teammates.
Former teammates.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. Because in Atlanta, I played with, really unselfish guys who just want to win. I'm not saying the guys here now are selfish. I'm just saying that we had a team over there with like 8 people who scored maybe 8 or 9 points or 10 points,
Right, yeah. I remember.
And that felt like a real team and like a togetherness. We really excited every time in practice, and it was just a special group. And of course, all those guys I love, but I mean, if it's just about the quality of on the court, getting a bucket. Of course, I say LeBron James.
Okay.
I say Russell Westbrook. PG 13. Ooh. Jason Tatum.
Ooh.
I mean, Shea and Jalen, those two guys, I mean, they really special. I left out a lot of guys too, like CP3.
Yep.
You might need a center here too. Otherwise, you're gonna have to. You're asking LeBron to play center in this lineup a little bit, maybe.
So hold on, that's just from point guard to center.
I mean, we can do it that way. I'm just picturing what this lineup would look like. That's all.
It's your game, man. It's
I mean,
your team.
if it's a lineup, then I gotta be. I'm gonna do Shea. I'm gonna do Jason Tatum. LeBron at 4, AD at 5. Who? And then probably
PG?
Yeah, probably Paul George.
Man.
Look, Russ is thriving as a sixth man with the Clippers right now, so Russ could be the sixth man on this team. It's cool.
You don't understand how good the bench might be, because we got Chris Paul coming off that bench. We got Jaylen Brown coming off that bench.
Kyle Korver is a shooting specialist off the bench.
Kyle Korver is a shooting specialist off the bench. We got Al Horford. Paul Millsap.
Al Horford.
Yeah.
Jeff Teague. We got a lot of people. CP3. I mean, I played with a lot of people. Got a lot of knowledge from them, like what they do on a day-to-day basis, on the court and off the court. I think I helped, Jason Tatum when I was in Boston. Helped him transition because I just came from, LeBron James, seeing what he do, and helped him a lot, off and on the court. And I mean, Paul George, my first year with OKC, he had that MVP season. He was unstoppable. I mean, he got hurt at the end of the season, but I mean, he was pretty damn good. And he's playing right now. He's playing on a high level as well. Of course, Bron, AD, play with a lot of people, man.
Yeah. No, man, you're gonna have a lot of jersey swaps in the course of your career.
Yeah, there'd be a lot of.
For sure, I'm trying to get every jersey right now. Every jersey.
So
I played against.
I wanted to ask you a jersey related thing, because Bruce Brown told us the other day he gets to Toronto, he sees that Jonte is wearing number 11. So he texted Michael Porter Jr. and was like, "Hey, would your brother give up his jersey number? I'll give him 10 grand." So he gave Jonte 10 grand to give up the jersey number. You've worn 17, German national team, every team you've played for except the Celtics, where it's retired for John Havlicek. Have you run into a situation like that where you had to get someone to give up your jersey number? And would you? Like, is it that important to you that if someone else had 17, you'd be like, "Hey, man, here's a little gift. Give me my number back."
Trust me, it's gonna cost more than 10K. All right, for stuff.
I don't know about paying somebody. But I'm gonna get that number though. I love my number 17. I mean, that was my dad's favorite number. He passed away when I was 16, and that number means a lot. 17th pick in 2013. Last year, we won bronze medal with the national team, and that was 17 years back that we won, a medal before, and the 17 is keep chasing me, and I gotta get that everywhere I go.
That's a cool story. I didn't know that. So,
yeah, that is very cool. Also, though, you just gave away all your leverage. If you ever end up somewhere, everyone knows how important it is to you now. That person's gonna drive a hard bargain.
If he tells that story,
I'm gonna ask nicely. I'm gonna ask always nicely. I'm gonna ask him, listen, it means a lot to me, and see if he work it. If he can work it out.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you say that's my dad's favorite number, you just got to give it up, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm folding instantly to that. So, Dennis, take care. Enjoy a couple of days. I know Darko said it was kind of like another training camp for you guys. So, I know you guys have been running around. You guys got a long road trip coming up ahead, too. But, enjoy this time, get better as a group, and we'll see you guys take the court again on Friday.
Yes, sir. All right, guys. Thank you.
All right, Dennis Schröder. Yo, he's got a lot of good former teammates, man.
Dude, it's like, yeah. CP3, Westbrook are your second and third string point guard. Yeah, you're doing okay.
I'm happy you put Shea in the starting five.
Yeah,
though.
He's been light on bigs is the only thing. Like Dwight Howard's probably backing up, or Paul Millsap as I guess Millsap and Horford when you have them together in Atlanta is Yeah, he's played with some good players.
I think they
Man.
put Pascal and OG on these lists now too. It's sad that they're not
Yeah,
on them.
we did say no. We did say nobody off of this team, but I guess technically there was a loophole there where he could have been like, yeah, OG is the stopper off the bench.
I've had this like idea to do with him for like 4 weeks running now. So when I did this originally, Pascal and OG were on the team. So it's sad that it's sad that
Man,
they're not here no more. I get it. I get it.
I brought up prepping for this. I brought up those OKC rosters, and this is like way too niche, and everyone probably turned it off. But I really want to ask him just how good a defender Andre Roberson was, just because
Go ahead, man. We're gonna have plenty of time with Dennis. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, because that's obviously that's my guy. But those OKC teams were a little awkwardly built, even though they were a lot of fun.
They were a lot of fun, man. They're very competitive year after year. And then, honestly, the thing with OKC that I feel so sick about is how long were they even in the dumps? Like, they didn't even really have to tank for very long.
No.
Like, but they just rebounded right away.
A big part of that is because, like, Shea just became so good.
Yeah. But, like, they now have, like, probably the best future in the league. That's probably something we should do, in a future segment too, just in terms of like who's got the best like young cores going forward.
Now, to be clear, they've missed the playoffs 3 years in a row, and they were like bottomed out enough to get top picks. But really, they went from 44 wins to 22 and 24, and then right back to 40.
Yeah.
That's so it was a quick, and that 44 win season, by the way, was in a shortened season. So that was really more like a 50 win season.
Yeah.
And then 2 years not being competitive, and then right back to the play-in last year.
So I feel like they haven't been down that long. So
it's good work.
If
you can keep turning the guys who want to leave into good stuff.
But you know what the key is? You got to trade them at exactly the right time.
And like,
it's like, Paul George came off at MVP type of season, but
he
was third in MVP that year.
And OKC had like all the leverage because the reporting was that Kawhi said, "Give me PG or it's not happening."
I mean,
and then
it's not happening. Like, where was he gonna go? Lakers.
The Lakers.
I don't know.
Toronto.
Man.
You run it back on a 1 year deal to win another ring and then do it all over again. That's what you should have done. The pandemic wouldn't even have happened.
Behind Blake, take that jersey down.
It never even would have happened if there's no bubble season, nothing like that. It's just everything stays relevant.
You wouldn't have been in LA anyway, man. You would have been in Orlando in that bubble. Anyway.
Take a break and do some around the NBA.
Let's take a break.
Yeah.
Some incredible games in the NBA last night. 70 by Joel Embiid, 62 by Karl Anthony Towns, and a game winner as part of a 43-point game for Kevin Durant. So let's break those down.
Yeah, not a game winner for Karl Anthony Towns, though.
Oh, a game loser, actually, because he went 1-on-5 and got blocked at the end there. But we're going to take this last break. I've been your host, Willu. You have been listening to The Raptor Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Welcome back to The Raptor Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Wim Lou. Co-host Blake Murphy. We are going to go around the NBA, and honestly, we don't have to go far. We've teased this a couple of times. So some incredible stat lines last night. Embiid dropped 70. I was watching this with one eye on the Grizzlies game and one eye on the monitor.
Be honest.
I listen. It takes a lot for me to not watch a Raptor game.
Yeah, and it's not that inconceivable to do at Scotiabank Arena. So where Will sits in the 590 booth, there are a couple of TVs above. From my seat, a little tougher. I got to have it up on my laptop screen, but I was managing a little bit, taking my little notes and stuff. Working on my trade deadline primer that no one's going to read because OG and Pascal already got traded.
Oh, don't worry.
But yeah, and then I stuck around after. I could actually hear you doing the post-game reaction pod, which was depressing, while I was watching the end of the Timberwolves game. Let's start with Embiid. So Embiid goes 24-41. 21 of 23 at the line. Finishes with 70 points, 18 rebounds, 5 assists. Somehow only a plus 11 against an 8-35 team. He's only the 9th player in NBA history to put up a 70 piece, and is quite safely at this point, I think we can say, having the most efficient and maybe most impressive high-scoring season in NBA history. We talked about it earlier in the year. No one had ever averaged this many points on this few minutes, on this high true shooting percentage. It just continues to move in that direction. 70 piece, man.
Dude, he's absurd. He's scoring over a point a minute right now on the season. He's once again leading the league in scoring. And when you watch the game, every time I looked up, it was just him just bodying Wemby. Like, it wasn't entirely on Wemby. Like, it was a lot of like Zach Collins get in there. Jeremy Sochan, like you're gonna get scored on. Everybody got scored on. When a guy scores 70, everyone holds a little bit of it. But like if this were like the Kobe 81 game, like Wemby's gonna remember it as the Jalen Rose aspect of that.
Yeah.
Like in the future when you know, Wemby gets asked about like, you know, what was your first welcome to the NBA moment? Like this could be one of those.
Yeah.
Because there was so many times.
Very first one will be that KD back-to-back that he had, the 2 games against KD.
Yeah.
But this will be, Joel Embiid, like,
Dude,
hey.
he was just pushing Wemby out the way and then dunking. Like,
and, like, not only the
ridiculous.
physicality, but the, like, hey, I think I'm going to be an MVP eventually. What does an MVP at peak MVP level look like? Well, Joel Embiid's the defending MVP. He might be the front runner for MVP right now.
It'd just be Jokic again.
You could flip a three-way coin between him, Jokic, and Shea, I think, for MVP right now. But that's what it looks like, right? And, like, I know Embiid gets clowned and stuff like that, and they were a little ahead at one point in the game. Maybe he didn't even. 70 points.
It's a Nick Nurse team, man. He played 40 minutes. Like
also,
this
it was a 10-point game.
A regular day.
10-point game. It's not like it was outlandish for him to be out there.
Wemby, by the way,
Wemby had 33 on the other side of 10 and 19 shooting. He at least got some of it back. But, man, I don't there's no answer to Embiid. There's nothing you can do. Boston has the best shot at it probably with Al Horford. Milwaukee, we'll see what their new coach has in store for Joel Embiid.
Well.
It's a fascinating thing with the 76ers having flamed out in the playoffs in the second round as many times as they have, because this is the type of scoring at this level and this volume and this efficiency that, like, on paper, it should be an impossibility in the playoffs. It should be like facing those LeBron Cavs teams when they were actually good, where it felt like there was no way to solve the problem that didn't create a bigger problem. Are you there with them yet? Or you still are you still in, you got to see it in the playoffs?
I think I definitely need to see it in the playoffs still. I think they still probably could use one more score.
I can't win alone.
Yeah, I mean, he can't win alone, you know? Like Tyrese Maxey's got to hit that high level in the playoffs consistently. As well, but I mean, they got an incredible chance, and I think that Nick is going to do a great job coaching them through making in-game adjustments through some of those moments where I think in previous runs you would critique, for example, Doc Rivers for not doing with that group. My thing with Embiid though is just like, is he the biggest player in the history of the league at his size to also have an incredible mid-range pull-up?
I mean, he's got to be. Like, first of all, they're just like
who else is even in the
there
mix for
aren't
that?
like guys his size.
Sure,
in general.
Yeah. But like guys his size are like, you know, a Shaq type, for example.
Yeah.
Like imagine if Shaq had a mid-range pull-up too.
Yeah.
And also made all his free throws.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, the best mid-range, like David West had a midi, but it was all catch and shoot off Chris Paul pocket passes.
Sure.
Like, like I don't, I guess like KD is almost 7 feet. So that's
but I mean,
it's not the same
it's
thing.
The bulk
it's
aspect.
ridiculous because like it does create this element of like imagine Brook Lopez, for example, or even Rudy Gobert, right? Who these are two of the premier interior defenders, drop back style, but you can play more conservatively because they are a defense unto themselves. And you now have a center who those guys have to guard. You don't have anyone on the court who's physically capable of guarding that guy other than those guys. And that guy can pull him out of the paint comfortably. Like string you out to the 3-point line in pick and pop stuff, handle at the top of the floor. And even if, say Embiid's on the handler side of a pick and roll, he's not going to do this a ton, but like you can't even really all that comfortably drop back against it. You have to drop back against it because if he gets ahead of steam, you're toast and he's going to the free throw line.
Yeah.
But like those are the kind of things that even against Rudy Gobert type defenders, Joel Embiid pushes on you. And oh, by the way, if you double, Tyrese Maxey's over on the second side.
Yeah, like that's the thing. The worst shot Embiid can get, like the worst shot he can get is that mid-range pull-up, and he's amazing at the mid-range pull-up. Like, what are the other shots that you would like the defense can corner him into? Like, there is actually none of that really on the table. Like, in terms of just biggest guys with them, like mid-range, but like Tim Duncan, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
and even Duncan was more of a like I'm not in the post, but I'll kind of post you and free myself for the turnaround. Like,
like I honestly, weirdly enough, Jokic has a lot of moves, so it's like you don't necessarily think about it, but the fact is he does have an unstoppable pull-up mid-range as well.
And he's got the and Embiid could do some of this as well, but Jokic has that fun part of his game where they operate so much DHO and high post stuff where it's a pull-up, but it's also more of like you thought he was going to hand it off, you thought he was going to make this pass, and he's like to me, pull up is like fluid. There's a lot of motion. Yeah. And Jokic is like, well, I'm actually dribbling and pulling it up, but I was never moving in the first place. It's interesting. The other thing is like the answer to your question a couple years ago of like, well, what do you do with Embiid? What is a worse shot than that to give him? Would have been the 3-point shot, but he's at 36% over the last 4 years on threes too. So like that's enough where I still think probably you would prefer him taking threes because 36.
But you can't really force a guy that big to just only take threes.
No, like you can go
the
under, you can drop, but like that also, like this is part of the problem with under coverage or drop coverage, and why someone like Russell Westbrook, despite everyone going under screens against it forever, was able to still score at a high level for a long time. That's a block of space that you get to pick up ahead of steam.
One of the more impressive parts of that too, he got to 70 points, only made 1 3, mostly ones and twos. Joel Embiid got to 70 on ones and twos.
By the way, shooting about 53% from 10 feet to the 3-point line.
Yeah, it's an absurd shot. Honestly, a guy that big should not also have an incredible mid-range pull-up. Another big man who can really shoot, Karl-Anthony Towns. 62 points last night in I was gonna say in the Garden. What's the Hornets arena?
It was in Minnesota.
Oh, it's in Minnesota? Okay, got you. You're right, actually it was. Yeah, so he made 10 threes.
I guess if it was the Hornets, you say in the Hive, right?
In the Hive, yeah. You know what? 62 in the Hive doesn't really hit the same as 62 in the Garden, mellow style. But yeah, so 10 threes made for Karl-Anthony Towns last night.
Very different style of racking up the points, right?
That's what I mean. Like, I feel like we've seen some 70 pieces recently. Like last year, we saw Dame had like 71 against Houston, and
Donovan Mitchell.
Mitchell had 70. Like those guys all, I don't remember the top of my head, but at least hit like 6, 7 threes type of deal.
I mean, Clay had
the
like
one and still got the 70 is wild to me.
Yeah, Clay had the like 60 points, 11 dribbles game.
Yeah, right. He made like 11 threes in that one or something.
And like this is a fascinating one because like Keegan Murray had the 13-3 game not that long ago too, right? And like that is obviously you're red hot and that is bending the game. That is game changing level of shooting. But 3-point shooting will eventually cool off.
Yeah.
The style in which Joel Embiid was dominating last night without the threes, and sure, maybe the free throws dry up at some point, but it's Joel Embiid. We know they're not going to dry up at some point. That Towns game where he was still good, but he was 11 of 20 inside the arc.
Yeah.
That's not crazy efficient. He didn't get to the line as much because it was more of a jump shooting game. I think what I'm getting is I understand how even against an irredeemably bad defensive team, the tap eventually went dry.
Oh, yeah.
On the Towns stuff. And now
2 of 10 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. There's also reporting out there. So John Krasinski of The Athletic, who does a great job covering the Timberwolves, reported that, and I'm paraphrasing here, but basically the Timberwolves players were very aware of not only Towns' stat line, but what Joel Embiid was doing elsewhere. And we heard Chris Finch after the game say, and this is not paraphrasing, this is a direct quote, absolutely disgusting performance on defense and immature basketball. The immature basketball.
Sounds like the React Pod.
The immature basketball they're referring to the team basically Towns watching after he had gotten a certain amount of scoring. So the Timberwolves lost this game. Karl-Anthony Towns gets blocked on the winner.
So I believe it was a 2-point game at the end there, or 3. Yeah, 1 possession game. Towns decides to go for the drive, and I'm not kidding when I say this. All 5 Hornets converge on Towns as he's driving to the basket to the point where it's like Nikhil's open in the left corner, Anthony Edwards is open on the top, and Jaden McDaniels is wide open in the corner to the degree where like Towns had like 2-3 opportunities to pass it to him. He goes 1-on-5 and gets stuffed because he's going 1-on-5. And yeah,
Leaky Black gets credit for the block.
There you go. Yeah. But honestly, 4 guys could have blocked him. It was like that Kobe picture where he's shooting over 4 New Jersey Nets, except they're all blocking him. Like,
and then Towns got another crack at it as the buzzer expired for a potentially game tying 3, and it didn't drop.
Yeah. So that's tough, man. It's tough to drop a career high and still lose.
It's also like, I mean, I know the Timberwolves have done so much work this year rehabbing the perception of the Timberwolves, and like we clown Rudy Gobert. Karl-Anthony Towns is like one of the best players who like has never really felt like that guy with level of consistency, and they had done a lot to erase that, and they're tied with the Bucks for the second best record in the league. But on a night like that, it's like, ooh, there's still a little bit of that in them. Like there's still. I'm not saying I don't believe because they're 30-13. They have a good point differential and stuff like that. But I'm not all the way there with them still. And like last night, I guess it's only 1 game, but it did feel a little bit like, oh, I do know these guys a little bit.
Right. You are kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. In
or
way.
At least them to come back down to being like respectably good instead of top of the table good. And the West is getting crazy tight at the top now where the Clippers, Nuggets, and Thunder are all within 2 games of them.
Yeah.
By the way, the Hornets, who are obviously not trying to win.
Yeah.
won this game. And that on a night that the Spurs lost, it's so funny because we get the reporting that the Timberwolves players were looking at the 76ers game and were very aware of Embiid's stat line.
They're on their phones at halftime, kind of deal. Yeah.
And the Hornets on the other side,
nowadays.
the Hornets, at least their management are on the other side, watching that game really intently too. Like, please don't win, Spurs. Please don't win, Spurs. As they chase for the bottom here. Then they accidentally win and trade Terry Rozier immediately, which we didn't get a lot of time to do earlier, but Kyle Lowry got traded today. So Kyle Lowry is, along with the 2017 lottery protected first to Charlotte for Terry Rozier. I know we did a little bit of it with Scotto, but how are you feeling about that one? It feels odd for the Kyle part, right? Like I know Kyle's not that great at this point. He's still solid, and you got to do what you got to do to make the contracts work and stuff. But it does kind of, I don't know, it doesn't feel nice as a Kyle guy.
It doesn't feel nice, but I think that for Kyle, he's going to appreciate even more how much he was loved here in Toronto. Because, like, him going to Miami, even though I think, admittedly, when you sign a guy to a $30 million deal, it's like you expect something, proportionate to that. And his raw counting totals just never really accounted for that in Miami. Having said that, though, he's a starting player who played huge moments as a Heat team went to the conference finals, to a Game 7 in the conference finals, and then the next year went to the finals.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's all Kyle. That's clearly it was Jimmy Butler and then Bam. And you can even go, down the list a little bit in terms of other guys who stepped up, Caleb Martin at times last year and stuff like that. But, like, Kyle played a lot of minutes in all those runs. And I get it. Like, he wasn't takeover. He wasn't Dame. He wasn't like an all-star type of scorer. But he brings a lot of those small things and tangibles that are pretty crucial when it comes to winning, the small playoff games or big playoff games like that. So,
he'll be somewhere.
I feel bad. I mean, it was even seeing the reaction of, like, some Heat fans being like, how dare he stood where he stood? Like, how dare he's wearing number 7 that Goran Dragic had? I'm like, damn, that's how I feel about Goran in Toronto. How dare he come in and replace Kyle? But I guess the feeling is mutual in that sense, though. But, yeah, I mean, I get it. The Rozier is an upgrade offensively. There's no doubt.
So the reporting around this is, the Hornets aren't done. They're going to try to find a spot for Kyle Lowry. They could be sellers in other regard. This is not a question I'm asking you for the Raptors because they're obviously not in buy mode and they shouldn't be. But when you look at this Hornets roster that has Gordon Hayward on expiring, Kyle Lowry on expiring, PJ Washington with 2 more years left after this, and who knows where he really fits. That's about it for guys that they have. So Hayward and Lowry both make around $30 million expiring. And there's like PJ Washington. Like, is there anything on the Hornets that moves you if you're a contending team around the league, or like to make the salary? Like, Gordon Hayward's still a nice player, but like you got to make the salary math work on that. It's going to be hard for the Hornets to pick up much more, right?
Bought out. It happens, man. Like,
unless you take on bad long-term salary to get it done.
Yeah. Not really. I'm not gonna lie to you. No, not really. There's not any guys that you would look on the roster and say like, this guy's gonna come in and help me win immediately. And that's what playoff teams would be looking to get. Rozier was the closest one to that. I mean, he's been part of, obviously, Boston when, there were runs where Kyrie was injured and he was starting. Scary Terry, that's the whole thing that started then. But, the rest of that group, I'm not even sure. What are they even building around Melo?
I don't know, man.
I mean,
honestly, in prepping for this segment and my reaction to that trade and doing some of the trade deadline prep, it's not going to happen. It's too early. The Hornets wouldn't do this. They'd be so lost without it. Someone got free LaMelo Ball out of there, and it should be the Toronto Raptors because, I mean, you'd have a pretty quick identity. It's not going to happen, obviously. It's he's in year 4. You don't trade away young potential star players. But so there's a Marcin Gortat quote recently.
We're skipping KD to go to Marcin Gortat?
Oh yeah, I guess. Sorry.
No,
do your KD thing. So KD had the game winner last night. He finished with 43 points.
Yeah, regular game.
Yeah. Afterward was about the 70 piece from Joel Embiid. Said the skill level is insane. The coaching and schemes on offense is insane. Yeah. This is the peak of basketball, in my opinion. Light 43 and a winner for KD.
Right. I mean, come on, man. No one even cares when you score 43 in a game winner when someone scores 70 and someone else scores 62. But do you agree with that statement, though? Like, this is the peak of basketball?
I mean, I'm not that old, so I wasn't.
Is it the peak of basketball in your lifetime?
Yeah, it certainly is. Okay. And like we can, we have to approximate these things with numbers and stories and Last Dance documentaries and stuff like that. And I would imagine if I were a little older, I would say no. There's no way to top the MJ era of basketball. It was there were too many good stars. There were too many good stories around that Bulls team and the Michael Jordan of it all. And I would understand that, but I wasn't watching basketball. I was a child. Now, though, you see, like, we can quantify some of this. Like, offense has never been higher. It's never been higher on a per possession basis. It's never really been higher, even like when we control for pace and stuff like that. It's just the skill level's crazy. The amount of three-point percentage has never really exploded, but the amount that teams take them has opened up the floor so that it's really, really hard to defend the rim now. Yep. And if you're a mid-range guy like KD, that's there for you. Like, that's why that is the land of superstars. It's not out of the game entirely. It's just that's for stars. So it's to the point, and you and I have flirted with this a couple times this year, where the league might have to give some stuff back to defenses at some point, because it's hard for, like, guys are bigger, guys are faster, guys are better trained, guys better nutrition. The skill set is higher, and there's not an answer for defenses. Yeah. And like, it's cool that scoring lines are high, scores are high, the Pacers are what they are, dropping 150, highest over under ever, etc. But at some point, I think the league might need to give something back to defenses to combat the rising skill level. Do you agree with what he said?
I think so. I mean, look, we're all living in the same time and, relatively even similar in age to KD. So, I'm just going to acknowledge that. But I think also at the same time, like, so I remember watching,
God, I'm older than Kevin Durant.
Like 10, 15, 20 years ago, where it's like you watch a game and you're like, all right, there's like 3 or 4 guys you don't really need to guard out of the 10 on the court, right? Like, let's say you're watching the Bulls from back in the day when it's like Derrick Rose's Bulls. I don't really need to guard Keith Bogans. No offense to Keith Bogans. No. I don't need to guard him. You know what I mean? Like, there's that kind of player on the court at almost every single time in that era, where it's like a defensive specialist on the wing, or like a big who's largely a rebounder who can't shoot at all. Like, there's just those archetypes were everywhere on each team. And now when I watch games, I'm like, there's very few guys you can actually just like completely ignore.
Well, this is why, and like, I feel like Tony Allen was maybe the tipping point for this in the Grit and Grind Grizzlies, where the conversation became not who the best defender is, who is the best defender that can be on the floor in a playoff game where it doesn't hurt your offense. And Tony Allen was like right on the line, and he did enough offensively as a spot-up shooter and cutter and things like that to be worth it. But if you fall on the other side, like, look at Matisse Thybulle's career. He just has a very, very good defender. Just hasn't done enough offensively to where
he's gotten himself to be a decent shooter.
A decent shooter, but he's not, Andre Roberson, to go back to that example from earlier, like, he was so good defensively and did enough as a cutter and offensive rebounder, but the second, like, his knees deteriorated a little bit, the defense dropped 5%. Okay, you're not doing enough offensively anymore. I mean, there's a reason that the Raptors during their championship run shrunk the rotation like 6.5 guys at times. It's just, you can't, the higher level of basketball, the deeper you get in the playoffs, less and less you can give up to an opponent. And I mean, I think what you're saying is pretty accurate. The barrier to entry as an offensive player now is crazy
really
high.
Like, you look at the Bulls, for example, they lost the game yesterday to the Suns, right? And they're 3 games under 500. And they're starting lineup. You can't really only just leave Patrick Williams wide open. He can score a little bit. DeMar DeRozan obviously is a skilled scorer. Vucevic is a skilled scorer. Kobe White's a skilled scorer. And then Caruso hit 5 threes. Like,
it's like the Raptors game, like John Conchar, established scorer, Vince Williams, established, Luke Kennard, not Santi Aldama. You can't leave these guys alone to stop Jaren Jackson's 20-point first quarter. But we got a whole bunch of days with no Raptors games here either. So get ready for a lot more John Conchar talk the next couple days.
It sounds like a threat. What was the last, real quickly, what was the marching quartet thing?
Oh, so he told HoopsHype that after he was waived by the Clippers, he wished he had gone to the Toronto Raptors. They called me 6 times and I didn't go. I could have been an NBA champion today.
So this must have been 2019.
This is the Eric Moreland spot.
Wow. Could have been Marcin Gortat willing Joshua Lindbergh instead.
No comment. Hey, the franchise could have had a legacy of setting those dirty, borderline illegal Gortat screens that I love so much, at least.
Yeah, okay.
Shout out to Eric Moreland, I guess.
We're done today before I slander any more media members. I'm your host, Will. You've been listening to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Thanks once again to co-host Blake Murphy, producer Mark Boffo, Daniele Franceschi, our board producer Derek Vandale, Jennifer Rolick, David Sis, Jeremy Hanatad, and big thanks to our guests Michael Scotto and Dennis Schröder. We'll be back tomorrow.